uns. And before I get to that, I want to thank one of our viewers for having a brand new un. Thank you, Renee. What we're going to do is we're going to make some strips that go around the end. So that's some stripping. We are going to be doing some insulating, and we need to make a cardboard pattern. What's that cardboard pattern for? Well, why don't we go ahead and make it, and I'll tell you why. Why? You may be asking, why are you doing a cardboard pattern? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, we have two different pieces of plywood that are going to be going down here to form the finished floor. And within that plywood, we have to cut notches around our wheel wells. We have to cut notches around where it goes out the door there and behind me and the battery box. And I don't want to have little strips of wood added in there. I want it to be nice and formally cutted. I want to have a nice cut form all the way around it without any gaps. And the second reason is similar to the first. Although we will have two pieces of plywood, I'm only going to have one full sheet of vinyl flooring, and I just want to use the cardboard pattern to cut it out, glue it in, lay it down, boom, done. For our next segment, we're going to be talking floors. I know you're seeing this and you're saying, but there's already a floor. Well, this is just the subfloor. If you remember a diagram that we did in the very beginning, and I'll try to flash a picture over here, what we did was, the whole plan for this was to have our subfloor, and then we're going to have a 1/2 inch of insulation, and then a 1/2 inch floor of plywood, and then on top of that we're going to do our, hopefully, a marmoleum decking, which will make it the pretty part. So we have structural. Now we need to do a little bit of thermal and the pretty stuff. Now the way we're going to do this is we are going to cut, say, like some 3-inch strips and go around the edges and go down this 1, 2, and 3. I'll show you as we go. But we're basically going to put a little bit of structure between the insulation so that when you step in the middle of the plywood floor, it won't compress the insulation and make a sagging point. Little technical, but you'll catch on as we go. So the next thing we need to do is cut our 3-inch wide strips that goes around the edges and a couple of them down the center, and then we'll fill those in with insulation. Let's get started. All right, we now have our pattern for the floor made out of cardboard. It goes into each of the 3 notches. It goes around the wheel well. So we're going to go ahead and remove this now so that we can put in our wood strips. Okay, we now have our strips cut in 4 inches wide by 8 inches long. Let's go over to our trailer now, and I'll show you what we're going to do with them. We just came back from the table saw, and we cut our 1, 2, 3, 4 strips into 2 inches wide by well, right now they're 8 feet. We're going to cut them off at the edge of the front and the back part of the trailer. And then after we secure these in place, we'll go ahead and finish our outside rail, but those will be 4 inches at each of the doorways. So let's go ahead and get these cut to size and secured in place. Now, before we can secure these strips to our floor, we have an issue we need to deal with. Some of our bolts stick up just a little bit, and so it makes it so our strip of wood can't lay flat on our subfloor. So what we're going to do is we are just going to mark with a rubber mallet. You go along and you smack it, smack it, smack it, smack it, smack it. And that puts a little indentation there where that bolt is sticking up. What we're going to do, we're we're just going to take our Forstner bit and our drill, and we're just going to drill it in just a little bit to make a spot for those bolt heads to rest. And now let's put it in place. There, and now it's nice and flat to the subfloor. We'll probably have to do that on the other side where its wheel well is, but in the center, not a problem. We're going to go ahead and just tack this in place. "12 inches apart. That way when we cut our insulation, we can just run it on the table saw and it'll go nice and smooth. What we're doing is we're just tacking these in place. Really the holding power will be when we put the main floor on top of it, and then it'll be bolted. And now we're back at the table saw. We're going to be cutting up our 1/2 inch thick rigid insulation that we're going to place between each of those sleepers or strips of wood. As you can see, as we continue, I've put a 4-inch strip along here, 4 inches here as it goes out our battery box, and along here, and 4 inches along this whole back edge. On this other side, we just continued with the 4 inches along the back, but there's no door access or anything along these two edges here, so I just made those 2 inch. Now we'll go ahead and continue to fill in the rest of our sleepers. Just kidding, wake up. We're going to go ahead and finish the rest of our sleepers up front, and then we'll fill it in with insulation. Well, as you can see, we now have all of our ribs in place. We have one piece of insulation. We're going to fill in our other bays with insulation, and then it's on to the main floor. So what's our final piece? Well, our final piece is another 1/2 inch of plywood that will sandwich our piece of insulation between it and our subfloor. So let's get to adding our final piece of plywood for our nice insulated sandwich. What you see here is our new 1/2 inch plywood below here. We have our brand new template here, which we made earlier out of cardboard. This piece of plywood is just holding everything down. What we're going to do now is we're going to draw the lines of the pieces of wood that we need to remove from our piece of plywood, and then we'll set it in our trailer. We've cut our 5 foot by 5 foot piece of plywood. Let's just hope it fits. And don't worry, you're going to see some gaps in there, but there's a reason for those. Let's go ahead and put our piece of plywood onto the floor, and we'll go from there. We have our 5 foot piece in here. And the reason we went with the 5-foot piece is because I didn't want any seams in the tile that's going to go on top of this. So we're going to have a seam over here, but that is actually inside of that box right there. And so nobody's going to see it. There is going to be like a 5-inch gap up front that we'll fill in with plywood. Again, you won't see that because that's going to be inside of this big upper cabinet that we're going to put in there. Our partition wall comes right down here and will edge right to this seam here, so you won't see that seam. And same as where I'm sitting, there will be a piece of plywood filled in, but you won't see any gaps whatsoever. Well, all right, fan friends, this is our final product. We filled in the back piece of plywood here that fits nice in our little opening here where the battery box is going to be. It fits nice and tight along here, which is going to be great. And then if you look clear up there, you can also see the fill-in pieces along the front edge, and you can't really see by the door or by that door, but it's all filled in, just ready to be bolted down. But we're not going to show that today. We're going to go ahead and end this video. I do appreciate y'all stopping by, and if you like what you've seen, please go ahead and click that like button. And if you have any comments, just let me know. And join us next week when we'll continue to roll this project along.